It was 1944. The Shermans, a ranch family, made one of the most dangerous decisions of their lives. Without even realizing it yet, Terry Sherman, alongside his wife Gwen Sherman, sold everything they had. They were looking for an isolated place that would be perfect for them to breed their high value cattle and sell it, being away from competition besides growing their own food and living a life of privacy. They saw the ranch as their perfect opportunity, but they would not be expecting that the new ranch they were moving into was about to become the worst decision of their lives. During the 1800s, there was a war that broke out between the Navajo tribe and the Utah tribe, where the main area of crossroad would be the same ranch the Sherman family brought. It was a hot place of rituals, sacrifices, and dark magic activity by the Navajo tribe. The Utah strictly prohibited its tribal members through generations from wandering to that specific piece of land. The Shermans just brought, mentioning that the place was cursed and extremely dangerous. They called it the Path of the Skinwalker. The Shermans, however, did not give much importance to the warnings coming from the natives as they proceeded with moving into the so called cursed land. The family of four consisted of Terry, his wife Gwen, and their two children, a son named Ty and a daughter named Shannon. When the Shermans inspected the property for the first time, they noticed how the bolts of the windows and the doors of the property were completely sealed off with heavy duty bolts. Its windows were tinted black to prevent from light coming in or out of the property. As with the Myers, the previous owners were barricading themselves from what was in the outside, wondering, especially at nighttime. Initially, Terry suspected if the Mayers were barricading themselves from the outside, it meant dangerous predators were stalking around in their land, but not ordinary predators. The behavior of the family and the necessity to take such measurements meant that the danger was extreme. When Terry exchanged a few words with the family, he was given bizarre instructions. Don't go out at night, and don't dig holes that go too deep. These instructions made no sense to Terry at first. Something or someone was terrifying the mayor's family at night. Initially, Terry was thinking that there were hostile marauders or thieves around the area. Wolves or coyotes were also another possible threat. Terry was expecting, but nothing that would intimidate him easily, or that was what he believed. Terry was a man from ranch life. He was sure that the Mayers were a city family, not used to the possible danger living in a ranch can expose people to. The afternoon when the Shermans moved in would be the very first inexplicable encounter the Shermans would face. Terry and his father Ed were unloading bags and belongings from their truck. The sun was setting down and they had to make sure everything was ready to go for the night. But noises emerged from the bushes. As they were in the open field organizing their cattle, unexpectedly a wolf like creature emerged. Terry and Ed had a lot of experience dealing with predators. They were always armed, but this wolf was no ordinary wolf. Its size was massive, like nothing they ever seen before. Its back, while standing on its four legs, reached both men in their chests. Only grizzlies were known to reach similar sizes. The musculature from that wolf was dense and powerful, massive in size behind its silver-colored fur that smelled awful, like a wet dog when it came closer to both men. It was waving its tail approaching them without an intent to attack, as its body language suggested. This was an intelligent being. Terry and Ed saw intelligence on its blue eyes. The creature was analytical. They were shocked, not knowing how to react. Terry reached with his hand out, touching its fur, described by him to be incredibly dense and rigid, and its muscles felt like stone. The scenario was unreal, but out of the sudden everything escalated when the creature reached with its jaw. for one of the calves of the ranch holding its throat, attacking it viciously. Terry, attempting to protect his cattle, grabbed his revolver and shot at the massive wolf multiple times, but causing no injury to it. He went to his truck to get his rifle, firing his shot at the animal, but only managed to get a chunk of fur out. No blood trail was left from the animal as it let go of the calf, looked back at Terry with its blue intelligent eyes, and walked back to the depth of the woods. Terry and his father Ed were speechless. This made the place a lot more dangerous. Whatever it was, the creature was intelligent, calculating, and extremely powerful. The Shermans did not know what they were up against in that place. After the incident, all the unpacking was cancelled and they gathered everything they needed to lock themselves inside the house. Terry was paranoid, questioning his sanity as he could not find an explanation for the experience he went through. He was sleeping on the couch that night, with a weapon on his hands, unable to sleep. The ranch's location is known for having a deep cave system that are interconnected with one another. These cave systems have not been studied yet, so the information regarding them isn't publicly disclosed. This already suggests that these caves could be habitated by beings mainstream science is not ready to talk about, which could have been evolving under the surface, far from human contact. The nights that followed through the next days were already disturbing when the Sherman family realized the dead silence of the woods was what they noticed at first. No birds, coyotes, or any animal from the Utah wilderness was being heard. In the woods were completely silent. Terry was an experienced outdoorsman, living close to nature through his entire life. Knew this was unnatural. Countless years living in nature, and he was aware that any forest produces noises such as owls, predators nearby, insects, or even wind blowing to the trees. But there was dead silence. Weeks later, deep noises of machinery underground was being heard, humming sounds that seemed to belong to heavy equipment made of metal underneath. Terry and his family initially believed it was an oil pumping company operating underground. The Shermans began to feel watched by something they did not understand, a presence that saw and knew everything about them. Yet, they could not tell what it was. They felt like mice in an open field. Terry became paranoid as the weeks went by. He would sleep on the couch with a loaded shotgun on his hands, expecting danger to step by. The rules on the family were simple. No one gets out when the sun settles down. Things became more serious when they spotted orbs of light during the night, appearing on the field without any possible explanation that they could think of. Terry would use his binoculars when he spotted light, coming through the open gaps of the barricaded windows. This did not make sense because it was nighttime, and from pitch black sky, sudden light as bright as the sun would emerge in the matter of seconds. When he used his binoculars to spot what could possibly be, he saw there was a massive orb, the size of buildings, or sometimes as big as a football field, hovering a couple meters over the ranch. But the inexplicable would be just beginning for Terry. When he looks at those mysterious enormous building sized orbs, they behaved like what appeared to be portals. There was a bright blue color sky behind them, and from them strange flying craft would pass through. This changed Terry's entire reality of what reality itself is. His wife would become paranoid as Terry was forced to do night patrols on his cattle that costed his entire life savings. Angus cattle of the highest quality that costed tens of thousands of dollars in value. Those were assets Terry could not afford to lose. Yet, the field would have different plans for Terry and his family as he witnessed small blue orbs emerging from the tree lines every time he stepped out at night. He would bring his dogs with him. These dogs were no ordinary house dogs. They were shepherd guard dogs, breeded and trained to be fearless, facing and taking out predators if they needed to protect the cattle. But their behavior in front of the blue orbs changed completely. They could sense danger. Terry did not understand. The dogs would panic and freeze, hiding behind him. Their growls would be submissive, yet terrified when the blue orbs emerged. When they got close to Terry, he did not know what to do. Sudden fear, hard to explain, could be experienced by him, as well including his family. Those orbs hovered around him in circles, producing static metallic sounds. Terry explained as a witness how these orbs seemed to have a liquid, bright substance from within, and behaved as if they had conscience of their own, as living entities. Every time these orbs appeared, it would cause deep fear on him and his family, chills and a drop of their body temperature, nausea, and a rapid spike in heart rate. As the weeks went by, everything got worse for the family. Cattle were vanishing out of nowhere in a matter of seconds. Terry would see it firsthand when, in one specific patrol, he tagged a calf, walked 200 yards away behind a single cedar brush line for less than 60 seconds. The calf was entirely gone right there. No tracks in the dirt, no blood, and no broken bush line. Many other days, Terry discovered multiple high value Angus cows dead with specific bloodless extractions. The eyes, tongues, ears, and reproductive organs were completely removed. When he examined one of the carcasses, he noted that the cuts were perfectly smooth, with microscopic incisions. There was zero blood on the hide or the surrounding grass, and no tracks leading to or from the carcasses. Even predators such as coyotes, wolves, or scavengers such as vultures would completely avoid the mutilated cattle. From Terry, the meat would rot untouched in the open sun because scavengers refused to go near the fields where the mutilation occurred. After all those incidents, Terry decided to switch into a defensive lockdown. He mapped the places where most of his cattle would get mutilated or vanish, usually near the thick tree lines, and began a process of installing heavy fencing around them. This broke a vital rule that the mayors told the Shermans not to dig holes too deep. Terry dismissed their warning. To secure the perimeter, Terry had to use a heavy 70-pound manual post hole digger. It was a solid, dual handled piece of industrial steel, but it was the only way to get those posts deep enough into the ground. As soon as he came back to the same spot less than 3 minutes later, he would notice his equipment went missing. As he searched for his machine, he would find it several meters in the top of a tree branch, somewhere in the top of a high tree. No human could go all the way up there, and no known animal could do such thing. Especially the 70-pound steel tool was discovered days later, wedged tightly into the highest canopy of a cottonwood tree, roughly 20 to 25 feet off the ground. What made the situation completely impossible was that the specific branches holding the iron tool were less than 2 inches in diameter. They were physically too weak to support a human climber carrying that kind of weight, yet the branches showed no signs of snapping, bending, or bark scraping. Furthermore, the muddy ground surrounding the open hole showed zero human footprints, zero tire tracks, and zero drag marks. Terry was running out of answers and patience. This calculated act of defiance had officially crossed a threshold. The land was no longer just passively watching the Shermans, it was actively retaliating against them. This mistake from Terry would prove to be fatal, as the coming events on the ranch would become dramatically more aggressive and would directly threat the safety of the family and their entire business. A couple days later, in the ranch, when Terry was moving four of his massive male bulls, all contained in a pasture bound, surrounded by heavy fencing, Upon his return, 45 minutes later, he could not believe that it was completely empty. His bulls, that were as heavy as 2 tons, vanished from thin air. No broken fences, and no visible tracks. After hours of search, he found his massive breeder bulls squeezed in like paper inside his trailer. The outside of the trailer itself was locked, no visible broken logs or machinery. Something managed to move 8 tons of pure muscle and fit inside a small trailer like it's paper, bypassing the locks on the doors. Until one day everything would reach a breaking point, where Terry and his family were forced to officially move out after 20 insufferable months of hostile, inexplicable activity during nighttime when a blue orb appeared. Terry, out of desperation and anger, released his 3 most aggressive and fearless guard dogs. Dogs bred to deal with wolves and other apex predators. They chased down the orb under Terry's command, which resulted in a fatal decision. As the dogs chased down the blue orbs into the bushes behind the tree lines, loud barks turned into agonizing screams of pain. Terry, unable to do anything for his dogs, waited until morning. When the sun was rising hours later, he followed their tracks and came upon a massacre. 3 spots of burnt grass, gray ash on top, and piece of burnt metal that belonged to their colors were the only trace left of his most important front line of defense. 600 pounds of muscle and fur totally evaporated by a blue orb. There was nothing left to do. For Terry, the only dog remaining from him was so psychologically damaged it never barked again or waged his tail. Finally, in August 1996, Terry would officially sell his property. Just 2 months after confessing his story to the press, the entire 512-acre ranch was sold to Robert Bigelow, a Las Vegas billionaire, real estate mogul, and aerospace enthusiast, for a price of $200,000. But the financial relief did not erase the deep psychological trauma that had deeply shattered the family's mental health. They weren't just exhausted, they were suffering from severe collective paranoia. Terry's wife, Gwen, was hit by the hardest by the constant terror. She became so consumed by fear that she could no longer sleep in her own bed, spending her final months on the ranch sleeping on the floor with a loaded firearm right beside her head. The family's daily life had turned into a tactical routine. Nobody could step outside to do chores or check the mail without Terry conducting a full perimeter sweep with his rifle ready. Chronic sleep deprivation from the underground metallic humming and flashing lights caused the children's anxiety to spike, turning their home into an active psychological war zone. Even after selling, the post traumatic echo followed them for many years. Any sudden noise or flash of light would instantly trigger cold sweats and a physical panic response. To make matters worse, Terry didn't even get a clean break. As part of the deal, Bigelow hired him back as the ranch caretaker because he was the only one who knew how to manage livestock under the ranch's anomalous conditions, forcing Terry to face the land every single day alongside a new team of scientists and armed guards. Right before leaving, when Terry and Wen initially broke their silence to investigative journalist George Knapp, the public reaction was brutal. Mainstream media and professional skeptics ruthlessly mocked the Shermans, calling Terry a lunatic and a fraud who invented stories about portals and aliens to cover up a failing business. But decades later, these classified government documents exposed an unexpected twist in the matter, resulting on the United States Department of Defense taking Sherman completely seriously. The Pentagon secretly used the data and documents compiled from the Sherman's case to secure a $22 million black budget program known as AAWSAP to scientifically investigate the exact anomalies the public previously mocked him for. A story of a rancher that was brutally mocked by the world, labeled as a crazy ranch, ended up being the piece of the puzzle that led to the highest funding of secret investigations from the military that the modern history has ever seen.